Hello, humans. So I received a question from a fellow believer. He says, was John 7:57 through 8:11 added? And if so, is the scripture still inerrant? You know what? Those are good questions. So what he's referring to here is a section you may or may not find in your modern Bible. John 7 verses 53 all the way to John 8:11. So, for example, in this Bible, which you see on the screen here, this is the CSB version. The entire section is separated from the rest of the text, and it's placed within brackets. And we also see that there's a note at the top here that says the earliest MSS do not include 753 through 811. And MSS just means manuscripts. And I apologize for my voice in advance. I'm sick, but you know what? I probably should be sleeping, but demons don't sleep, so I'm just going to answer your question. I'm concerned about your faith, so let's do that and then I'll sleep. So what does all of this mean, right? So your questions are logical. They're good questions. Was this section added to the Bible? If so, is Scripture still inerrant? Your questions actually invoke a similar response to a YouTube video I already posted titled, "Why Are There Missing Verses in My Bible?" So if you haven't seen that video yet, please watch that video. I'll put the link in the bio or comment section. It's about 12 minutes long. So regarding John 7:53 through 8:11, the perceived problem here is that some scholars question whether this story should even be in the Bible at all. The story of the woman she's found in adultery. She's taken to Jesus by the Pharisees. This story is found in the KJV, ASV, NASB, NIV. However, like the NEB places it at the end of the gospel under the caption, "An Incident in the Temple." And since 1971, the RSV places it in special print set off from the rest of the text, as does the NRSV. In the standard Greek New Testament, Nestle-Aland text, the United Bible Societies, it places brackets around it, indicating it's not a part of the original text of John. So why do many scholars believe that this story is not part of the original manuscript of the Gospel of John? Well, there are several reasons why many scholars question whether this passage belongs here in John's Gospel. So the passage does not appear in the oldest and most reliable Greek manuscripts. It is not found in the best manuscripts of the earliest translations of the Bible into Old Syriac, Coptic, Gothic, and Old Latin. No Greek writer commented on this passage for the first 11 centuries of Christianity. It's not cited by most of the great early church fathers, including Clement, Tertullian, Origen, Cyprian, Cyril, and others. Its style, it doesn't fit the rest of the Gospel of John. And that actually brings me to my next point. It actually interrupts the flow of thought in John's Gospel. So it actually reads better if one goes directly from John 7:52 directly to John 8:12. And you can see that Jesus actually refutes that claim that the Pharisees made about him. And then also the story, it's either wholly or in part, has been found in several different places in the Bible manuscripts. And I'll put those places there on the screen for you to see. And then finally, many manuscripts that include it in this specific placement setting in John 7:53 through 8:11, they have marked it, they've indicated that they believe it's doubtful. However, in spite of all this, because this story has been found either wholly or in part in other places, in other manuscripts, albeit later in dating, it has been included in many Bible translations in brackets. Now, many Bible scholars believe that this story can be authentic because there does not seem to be any reason to reject it apart from the aforementioned reasons. It contains no doctrinal errors. It fits with the character of Jesus in his teachings, and it fits with the character traits of the Pharisees. However, there's no certainty that it was in the original Gospel of John. So before I answer your question about the inerrancy of Scripture because of this passage, let's examine this passage and understand why it's in the Bible. So in John 8, verse 5, the Pharisees brought a woman caught in the act of adultery and proposed that she should be stoned to death. However, Leviticus 20:10 and Deuteronomy 22, verses 22 to 24, state that both the man and the woman caught in the act of adultery should be stoned. Well, that leads us to a curious question. So, where was the man? He's not present in this story. Now, in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus condemns the Pharisees for devouring widows' houses, for tithing, yet neglecting justice, mercy, and faithfulness. And it is for this reason Jesus said that the Pharisees do not practice what they preach. So it matches the Pharisees' character traits here. Now in John 8, verse 6, the Pharisees used this scenario to try to trap and condemn Jesus. And this fits with the Pharisees' character traits. It fits with the other accounts that we see throughout the other Gospels. And not only does it fit with the other Gospels, but it also fits with the Gospel of John in different places. And then in John 8, verse 7, Jesus told the Pharisees that whoever is without sin should be the one to cast the first stone. Now, this is actually extremely important and relevant because Deuteronomy 17:7 states that the witness of the crime must be the one to cast the first stone. However, because they were the witnesses, well, that would put the guilt of the woman's blood on them. And again, where was the man who committed adultery? So either one of the Pharisees was the guilty one and had committed the act of adultery with that woman and they were covering up for him, or the Pharisees allowed the guilty man to leave. Thus, they violated the law and they showed partiality in judgment, which the law condemns. Another possible scenario is that the Pharisees conspired together to lie against a woman that they hated, even though she had been innocent of adultery on that occasion. But if that were the case, then the Pharisees were guilty of being false witnesses and thus violated the law according to Deuteronomy 19:18-19. So either way, the Pharisees are actually the guilty party here. So if Jesus said that the woman should not be stoned, well then the Pharisees would try to accuse him of violating the law. However, if Jesus ordered that she should be stoned, well then Jesus would have violated the laws of the Jews because the guilty man was not present, and the Roman Empire's law that only the Romans could execute capital punishment, as we see in John 18:31. So Jesus' clever response here called attention to the Pharisees' own guilt. Only the one without sin could cast the first stone. However, they were already guilty because the man who committed the adultery wasn't even present. Thus, if they did cast the first stone, well, they themselves would have broken their own law as well as Rome's law because they couldn't do the capital punishment and they would be condemned. So Jesus had them in a checkmate position. And this is actually very similar to Paul's rebuke that we see written in Romans chapter 2, verses 1 and 22, as well as Jesus' own warning in Matthew 7, verses 1 to 5, which is all about hypocritical judgment. And so when Jesus said that whoever was without sin was able to cast the first stone, he boldly declared that only he was able to cast the first stone because he is the only one without sin. He's the only one who is sinless. But instead, Jesus merely told the woman to go and sin no more, which brings me to the verse 11. So in John 8, verse 11, Jesus told the woman to go and sin no more. Now, we actually see this in John 5:14, so it fits well with that. It's a character trait that Jesus has done before, and this fits well with what we see in Luke 5:32 and Romans 2:4. So it all fits together. So in conclusion, Simply because there's less evidence for this particular passage, that doesn't mean that this incident didn't actually happen. In fact, Jesus did many things that are not recorded in the Gospels, and that much is recorded in John 21:25. It says there are many things where Jesus did that were not recorded. So it might have come from oral tradition. Though this passage is clearly out of place where it's at, in John 7:53 to 8:11, ancient scribes clearly attempted to insert this story in different places that maybe they believed it would blend in better or whatever, while they were creating copies from the autographs, the originals. However, because there is less evidence for this particular passage than we have for all others, it's wise to allow this passage to just simply remain as background information. Like, we shouldn't formulate any doctrines on this as a foundational belief. And certainly, I don't see that we should write a book because of this passage. But there might be a few reasons to reject it, as we've already mentioned, but there are also many reasons to accept it. So Scripture interprets Scripture, and in this case, all of Scripture is able to affirm several aspects of this story. And in the end of the story, all the religious hypocrites walk away defeated, just as we see in Matthew 22:46. So that lines up as well. Now, in conclusion, in regard to your question as to whether this affects the inerrancy of the Bible, I don't believe it does, because even with this story, the Bible is still without error or fault in all of its teachings. Again, the teachings or truths of this story is only affirmed by multiple other scriptures. In addition, this story does not contradict anything else in the Bible because it does not contain doctrinal errors. It fits with the character of Jesus and his teachings, and it fits with the character traits of the Pharisees. So, for more about how we got the Bible in its finalized format, please see my other article that I published, How Did We Get the Bible? And then, let me know what you think. I'd like to collect your thoughts. Alright, I'm going to go to sleep now.